Yes, now we do.
Okay, so once again, it's wonderful to be back together with you. I was 3 weeks in Europe, minim. And Baruch Hashem, to me, vacation is a Torah, and it's special schus. You know, being in Switzerland, people come to vacation, running around in the mountains and hikes all day. If I wouldn't be there, probably they wouldn't learn much. And the entire oilam comes together every night, 50-minute shir, so it's a big schus and a lot of Rabbotzes Torah. I spent a Shabbos in Prague, which was an amazing experience. So Baruch Hashem, we're back together to our wonderful Yar Kala. And it's a big schus in Chodesh Elul, giving me the opportunity to be Marbitz Torah. Today's shir is dedicated to Ilui Nishmas Reb Menachem Yitzchok ben Reb Yankov Yisrael, the late father of my dear friend Reb Chaim Orlinsky. For many years, Chaim to me has been like a brother, taking care of our foundation in America and much, much more than that. And I knew Reb Menachem Yitzchok very well. He was a young boy in Poland when the war broke out. He went to the forests with the partisans fighting the Nazis, and after the war, volunteering to fight for the establishment of the state of Israel. And he was a real Tomim, Tzaddik Tomim. And Baruch Hashem, he was able to raise a beautiful family of Talmidei Chachamim, Oyevei Torah, following in the footsteps of his footsteps and of his great predecessors, grandfathers and forefathers. So Reb Menachem Yitzchok should be a Melitz Yosef for Chaim Moshe and Mindy Orlinsky. They should only know Nachas and the status. So as Reb Shlomi Yedidi mentioned, today's topic is Daled Minim from Perish Shvius. Is there Kedusha Shvius regarding the Daled Minim? 2 out of the 4, L'chora, there is no question at all. It's the Mishnah of Fareshes that an Esrog has Kedusha Shvius, and on the other hand, it's a milsa the pshita that our rabbis do not have Kedusha Shvius. An esrog is a fruit, like any other fruit. And in the Mishnah, Sukkah Daf Lamed Tesam Aleph, we learn, person that buys an esrog on Shvius has a problem. There's an Isser Schayra, Perish Shvius. La'achalo v'lo l'schayra. So how could you buy an esrog? Well, you could expect to get it for free, get it as a gift. But the halacha is you cannot do schayra with Perish Shvius, which means you cannot make a business out of Perish Shvius. But if you had some Perish for yourself or your family, and you want to sell part of them, you could. So anyway, how does one buy an esrog if he needs to pay for it? And the seller demands to be paid. Mavliya d'mei esrog belulav. It is one of the sources in which we find that aroma is a legitimate tool. So the Mishnah says, as we see on our screen, and then the Gemara says, the seller, the one that has that esrog, is not willing to give it for free. That is a flaw. Well, obviously it's a haroma. The lulav is not supposed to cost 500 shekel. And it is clear it's the esrog that costs more money than the lulav, but he is mavliya. Mincha Soshor, Chelik Beis, there's a lengthy discussion of the concept of haroma. It's not the sukkah we're discussing today. We'll put it aside. Shem Yazor, we should have another 50 years to learn together on. We're going to learn many, many sugyas. We might get to haroma as well, but it's not today's sugya. So what we learn from this Mishnah, an esrog has Kedusha Shvius beyond doubt. That is not a question. On the other hand, HaRavis definitely don't have Kedusha Shvius. In the continuation of this very sugya, Sukkah Daf Mem Amud Aleph, Eitzim don't have Kedusha Shvius. Eitzim ba'alma. HaRavis one has no benefit from. You don't use HaRavis for anything. And therefore it's like Eitzim ba'alma, there's no Kedusha Shvius. Regarding Lulav, a big discussion. So the Gemara says in Sukkah Mem Amud Aleph, what type of a lulav is he selling? Lulav shel shishis. So lulav is a date tree. So the lulav is a tree, it's a palm. It gives dates. And therefore, as lina bosachanoto. So it's a lulav shel shishis. Therefore, it has no kedusha shvius. So it's mashma from the Gemara that a lulav shel shvius does have kedusha shvius. Why is that? You don't eat the lulav. Both Rashi on the spot in Sukkah, and Toyses Bava Kamed of Kufalav say, well, a lulav is used like a broom, litateya, and therefore it has kedushas shvius. Klal godol b'shvius. Kol shahana osoi v'bi'urei shava has kedushas shvius. Anything that people use for their benefit, and in the normal course of usage, it is consumed when you eat or drink, bad bevad, as you enjoy your food or your drinks, it is consumed. And the food is over a bottle of miniolim, and the drinks as well. So anything that is hana'asay b'bi'urei shava has kedusha shvius. So when you use a broom, it is by normal usage, in the course of normal usage, it's worn out. It is ultimately destroyed. It becomes old, it breaks. Well, modern brooms could last much longer than the ones of yore. So in days of yore, some people used lulavim as brooms. It's not a very efficient broom, but that is what Rashi and Toyses both explain. The Rambam, Peresha Mishnah, in Perek Gimel of Masechet Sukkah, the Rambam simply writes that a lulav has no kiddush shvius, and the same is in Bar Tanura. Avra lulav mutar l'machroi k'motzim ve'en kiddush shvius chala olav. And the same is in the Bar Tanura. We have it on the page. The Rambam, we just scroll down, Perek Ches, Halacha Yud Aleph Melcha Shmita V'Yovel. The Rambam brings the halacha that we just saw in the Mishnah. Halakech lulav miyam oretz v'shvius, noisen lo yesig matona, v'em loi nosen loi, mavli eloi d'mei esrig bid d'mei lulav. But the Rambam doesn't stipulate that we're talking about a lulav shel shishis. So many noise kalim assume Rambam l'shita soy. Rambam's shita in the Perusha Mishnah is that a lulav has no kiddush shvius, and therefore even a lulav shel shvius, no problem of schayla. A lulav is the eitz ba'alma v'yevek kiddush shvius, and therefore the Rambam, contrary to the Gemara, does not stipulate and is not mefarish that we're dealing with a lulav shel shishis, even if it's a lulav shel shvius, has no kiddush shvius. But here, the big question comes up, but it's against the Gemara. The Gemara does say lulav shel shishis. The Yerushalmi doesn't ask the question at all. So maybe the Yerushalmi would prove that a lulav has no kiddush shvius, and therefore the Yerushalmi just, the Mishnah, kipshutoi, lulav has no kiddush shvius, and therefore you could purchase a lulav on Shemitah, you have no problem. But if it would be a machlokes Bavli and Yerushalmi, one of the most fundamental rules in halacha is whenever there is a stira between Bavli and Yerushalmi, halacha kebavli. So the Achronim deal with this question. Kapais Tmorim, Chasam Soifer, Kedusha Chasam Soifer, and Sukkah, they say. Mem Omed Aleph, if we wish, we could go back to the Gemara. The Gemara does say, regarding Aravis, Eitzim Ba'alma have no Kedushas Shlias. Ale Konim v'ale Lulavi. So let's have a look from the top of the page. Tamed the Lulav Bar Shishis Anechnas Shliaso. We're dealing with a Lulav with Shras HaShishis. Odosh, Amai, Eitzim Ba'alma. Ve'eitzim Be'em Mishum Kedushas Shlias. This nan, ale konim, ale gefanim, shegibavon, lachoiv al pnei asoda, likton lachili yesh behem kiddush shvius, likton la'etzem, ein behem kiddush shvius. The Gemara says, shani hasam, the omakro lachem liyafo, dom yedi liyafo, misha nosa v'biyura shavo, yatsu etzem, shana asan achar bi'uram. Why is etzem hana asan achar bi'uram? Eitzim are usually used to heat up the house in a fireplace. Once, the basic fuel to heat homes was firewood. So you get the heat after the wood is consumed, and that is ein hana asoi v'bi'ura shova, therefore it has no kedusha. And then the Gemara asks, how about eitzim demashchan? Eitzim demashchan is used for lighting, for achieving light. And they are wood that has a lot of oil, like from an olive tree. And that is an also bi'uroi shava. You derive your benefit, your pleasure, before the eitz is actually consumed and destroyed. So the Gemara says, Stam eitzim lahasokah oimdim. So we do not deal with every type of wood into itself. The general rule is eitzim ein hana asan v'bi'uram shava. Avalulav. You see the Rashi, which is yellow. Avalulav ikarana osoy lechabe desabayis. Ohushas v'uroi v'kilkuloi. So Rashi's interpretation is Lulav has Kedusha Shvius. And that's why the Gemara says Lulav Shel Shishis. But the Kapis Morim and the Chazam Sofer say, according to the Maskonas HaGemara, Lulav has no Kedusha Shvius. Because Lulav is an eitz, just like Ale Konim, Ale Ta'anim, which is an eitz. And we do not differentiate between one type of wood and another type of wood. Just as a general comment, many good Yidden today hold their lulav till Seifes Chometz. Kiven the Sabbath by Chod HaMitzvah, the Sabbath by Mitzvah Achrita. So in HSukkah, there are two basic minhagim. What do you do with your lulav at the end of the day? I usually keep my lulav till Erev Pesach. And I use it for Seifes Chometz. Others use it for Afiyas HaMatzos. So this is totally coincidental, but the Kapis Morim and the Chazam Sofer say, Lulav has a din of eitz. And in the Maskonas HaGemara, the Gemara retracts. Does it necessarily need to be a Lulav Shel Shishis? Even a Lulav Shel Shvius does not have Kedushas Shvius. Some Achronim say that today, Lulavim are used primarily for mitzvah. Yichidoi mitzvah. So let's scroll up a bit and see the Gemara once again when we're dealing with Ale Konim and Ale Lelavim. So the Gemara says, Ale Konim vi Ale Gefanim. So it depends. What is the kavanah of the malakit? if he bears in mind to eat, then it has Kedusha Shvius. If he does not have any intention to eat, but rather to use as firewood, doesn't have Kedusha Shvius. So our Lelovim are not used as brooms. Those times are gone. Nobody in the world uses a lulav lachabed boyas abayis. It's only l'shem mitzvah, and therefore has no Kedusha Shvius. It is once again ein hana asay bi'urei shav. So in two different sugyas we find on anything that grows, gidulei karka, and we have a suffix. Does it have Kedusha Shvius or not? It depends on the intention of the malakhet. One source is on our page, alei kanim and alei gefanim. Liktor lachili yesh ver Kedusha Shvius. Liktor leisem en Kedusha Shvius. The other sugyas in Bava Kama Kruv based on Medalef. Yichtor lemishteh v'lekvisa. And the Tosefta, Perikei Aloha Yudches, I don't know whether we have the Tosefta on our list. Teven shenosnoi lekar. So Teven is straw. It's Machal Behema. Machal Behema has Kedusha Shvius. But in days of yore, they put straw into pillows and blankets. Once again, we don't do that in our days. But in days of yore, in the world that was. So Teven shenichoi bekar, ein boi Kedusha Shvius. And the Rambam Paskins, Perikei Aloha Chav Gimel, Teven shenichoi bekar, areu kimevuar. Areu kimevuar. Which means no Kedusha Shvius, no Chiyuv Biur, Areu kimevuar. So the other mahalach in the Rambam would be, maybe in the days of the Mishnah, Lulavim will use Lechabed Esabayis, and therefore they have Kedusha Shvius. But in the days of the Rambam, that was no longer. And therefore the Rambam omits the Gemara. Then it must be a Lulav Shel Shishis, because in the days of the Rambam, Lulavim were no longer used as brooms, and therefore no Kedusha Shvius. It's a schus for me to share a Dvar Torah from my late father, Zecher Tzaddik Levracha. Reb Shlomo knew my father very well, and maybe some of you did. My father was a business person. Reb Moshe Feinstein very much wanted him to go into the bonus. He even offered him a job in a little town in the Catskills that was looking for a HaRav. But my father declined, but he was a tremendous Talmid Chacham. Sukkah Lamed Hey, the Gemara says, you should not use an esrog shel truma for mitzvahs daled minim. So the garrison of the Gemara is mepnei shemafsido. An esrog shel truma has kedushas truma, and there's an isser to be mafsid truma. So if you use an esrog 7 days Yom Tov, 6 days, excluding Shabbos. Sometimes it's nifsad, it's no longer a u'ila achila, because it's mishish yudayim. Rabbeinu Chananel's gersa is mepnei shem machshira. Machshira lekabel tuma. What is the problem? If you're machshir and esrog shel truma lekabel tuma, you're just gonna take care of the esrog and not to be metama. And the other question is, why is he machshir lekabel tuma? If it doesn't get wet with water, so the chashash is it's difficult to hold. The esrog shouldn't become wet. So my father had, an idea, and he used to say, "Machshir lekabel tuma." It is no longer defined as an oichel, maybe as a kli, and moitzia metoides oichel, and therefore that would be against Mishmeres Trumoisai. It's a Perish Rochoik. The Divrei Yatziv, Moiri V'Rabi, Baruchaim Chelik Beis, Reishayim Beis, says a similar Perish. It's a Perish Rochoik. I think Pashtas Kavanas Rambam. It's unlikely you're going to use the Esek 7 days and it's not going to be Moshe L'Chabatim, and then there's a Chashash of actual Kabbalah Stoma. And therefore, Chazal recommended don't use an Esek for Shvius. But anyway, coming back to our basic sugya, the Rambam seems to be clear in Beresha Mishnah and in Mishnah Torah. Lulav has no Kedusha Shvius. Reb Shlomo Zalman actually asking Aloha Lamaisa, Luluvim Bisman Hazeh have no Kedusha Shvius. The only reason that Lulav would have Kedusha Shvius, like Rashi explains, it's used as a broom and also that is no longer the reality, and therefore the Rambam simply says you could buy a lulav and shvius and pay for it, and then you're mavliya the me'esrig belulav. How about hadassim? Once again, a big discussion. So the Yerushalmi, Yud Ches Amid Beis, there's a discussion whether hadassim have kedusha shvius. The Rambam is mashmit. Chazon Ish Yud Alatet is machmir based on the Yerushalmi. On the other hand, Reb Shirley Diskin, in a tshuva quoted by the Tzitz HaKodesh, who was one of the Chachmei Yerushalayim, said in Tet Vav, Reb Shirley Diskin, his minig was to be mavliya the me'esrig behadassim, not belulav. Rav Tikuchinsky, Rabbi Chil Mechel Tikuchinsky, in his Sefer HaShemitah. Rabbi Mechel Tikuchinsky was one of Chachmei Yerushalayim. And in many Nekudas, he is a bar plukta of the Chazon Ish. And he always stood up for Minig Yerushalayim. And a Shemitah, there are various different halachas in which the Chazon Ish paskin different than Minig Yerushalayim. Sefer Shemitah, Siman Zayin, argues that today people no longer plant hadassim for besomim. The vast majority of hadassim that are planted and used are la mitzvah, and therefore no kedusha shvius. So this is once again a topic which is a matter of dispute between Gedolei Yerushalayim, represented by Reb Shirley Diskin and Reb Michel Tikuchinsky. Their opinion was hadassim bismanenu have no kedusha shvius, and the Chazon Ish that's machmir lefi haYerushalmi. Gedolei Yerushalayim's opinion is once again based on changing reality. We no longer use lulavim as brooms. We no longer plant hadassim for their scent, for their fragrance. Almost all the hadassim planted and cut are lidvar mitzvah. I have a hadassim bush in my backyard. It's not mishulash. It definitely is not mohudar. So I don't use the hadassim that go on by makbad. But many times, Motzei Shabbos, I would cut off a few twigs and use them as besomim. But I do not represent a consensus or a majority. So once again, Esrik has kedusha shvius. HaRav has no kedusha shvius. The lulav and the hodas are a big discussion. According to the Gemara Bavli, a lulav has kedusha shvius, so therefore the Gemara explains mavliya the me'esrik belulav shnav kedusha shvius hana osay v'bi'urei shava. You derive benefit and you consume and destroy together with the pleasure or benefit you derive. And therefore there is kedusha shvius. From the Rambam we learn no kedushas shvius. Why? Either because the maskonas Gemara.
Can't talk now. Text me.
Ale lulav is like any other eights, or because changing world. We no longer use lulav for anything, only ledvar mitzvah, and therefore no kedusha shvius. And then the machlokes regarding Gedasim. Yerushalmi Yud Chesed Bezes Mashma Devis Kedusha Shvius. It's not brought in Rambam. So just like the Rambam ignores the Gemara Lulav Shel Shishis, the Rambam doesn't call the Yerushalmi. Chazon Ish is Machmir Gedol Yerushalayim. Now the Pshilei Diskin's opinion is interesting. He was Machmir Lagabi Lulav. So why wouldn't he be Mavliya Eslik Belulav, just like the Mishnah says, like the Rambam says? Why choose a dasim? Obviously, he was machmer by lulav because it's a gemara freshes. But it was mekel regarding the dasim. It's not in the Bible. Shuvas Marashtam, Yoredeh Kuf Tzadik Beis. And let me just tell you who the Marashtam was. The Marashtam was one of the greatest poskim going back more than 500 years. Shuvas Marashtam, Yoredeh Kuf Tzadik Beis. Deals and he is troubled. And he wants to argue no, because they're not planted for consumption. Most people don't eat them. It's just for the bar mitzvah. And he brings the Rambam. The Rambam writes that fruits and vegetables are chayav b'tumas ha'maisa zimlikton la'achila. But if it's not la'achila, there would be no chiyuv. Kapis Temorim Daf Lamed Daled in Sukkah, Reb Meir Simcha Or Sameach in Perek Ches, Hilchas Lulav, deal with this question. So the Achronim say many people eat eslig. My late mother, every year, we used to bring her our esrogim after Sukkot, and she used to make kompot. And we usually ate it, Chameshosa B'Shvat. That was a special treat. I think there still are hundreds of people that eat esrogim after Yemei HaChag. So our minhag is L'chayev esrogim tumas ha'maises, and you need to be mafresh. An esrog shel devil, you can't be yotzim. So every soicher from esrogim knows you need to be mafresh tumas ha'maises. Lo kedivrei Maharashtra. So up to this point, we discussed one question. Kedushas shvius b'dalet minim. And we made it clear, we are noye kedushas shvius by Yisrael. That is a Mishnah. Nobody disputes that Mishnah. And the Mishnah is brought in the Rambam. And maybe it is because so many people do consume esrogim, even though primarily they are used at the bar mitzvah. And this brings us to a huge, huge problem. Could we have the Mishnah, Perek Vav, Masechet Shvius, Mishnah A? Do we have it on our list?
We do. We have it on the second Marmakaimus list. But before we put it on, so Lamaisa, before the Rav goes to his strigim, what do we b'nei chutz la'aretz, a lulav shows up here, and a dasim show up here? Do we have to do anything Lamaisa, or can we just take them from the seicher the way it already is? Do we have to say havlah? How does it work?
Halacha Lamaisa. There is no Kiddush Shvius, neither by Lelovim nor Hadasim. So you could buy a Dasim and a Lulav. Normally, the Esrig, you are Mavliya in the Lulav. The May Esrig by Lulav. But Lulavim and Hadasim, no. Halacha Kedivrei Gedol Yerushalayim, and Halacha Kedivrei Rambam regarding the Lulav. Kach Neder Ani Yistai. I don't know what your local Rabbana might paskin, but this is what I paskin in Eretz Yisrael. You buy lulavim and esrogim and Hadassim in a normal way. But the esrog, you must be mavliya. So in Eretz Yisrael, the biggest esrog producer is Chagai Kirschenbaum. I know him very well. He brings me an esrog Mahuda every year. And he's a real tzaddik. Shemitah, his fields are open. Anybody can come take esrogim ka'avas nafshay, ka'avas libo. So, in esrog, if people sell esrogim, you are mavliya. But actually, there's no heter to sell esrogim. It is only oitza based, and it's just collecting expenses. But nevertheless, I think you're not gonna get many esrogim for free, and esrogim will be sold, and the justification for selling esrogim would be expenses, tercha, labor. So it's just a technicality. You are mavliya the may esrog.
Does the kohen have to say anything or do anything, or it's implicit in the fact that the meicher is selling it? When you buy it from a soicher here in America, which is the second or third hand, anything that anybody has to do or look out for?
I think so. I think if the meicher doesn't say it, then the kohen should say it explicitly and say, how much would this package cost? You cannot buy an esrog on its own. That's number one. When you buy an esrog, you need to buy it the same place you're going to buy either a dasam or a lulav. You can't be mavliya the esrog in the box. That's a gemara in B'choros. By a bechor, Balmum, there is an issa of mechira. And that's the other source we find the concept of mavliya of havloah. And the Gemara says you cannot be mavliya basar ba'atzomis, because the atzomis are worth nothing, and therefore havloah would not work. You could be mavliya the basar ba'or, because the hide is worth. It's not worth as much as the meat, but it still has some worth. And based on that Gemara, you cannot be mavliya the may esrog in the box, because the box is given for free. So havloah would not work. So when you buy an esrog, you must buy it together with the lulav and together with the dasam. And then you need clearly to say, the money I'm paying is for the lulav, for the dasam, not for the esrog.
If you didn't say it, it's still. If you didn't say
yes.
It's implicit as an umdana. It's pasha that you did it that way.
I don't think so, because most of the people that sell esrogim are amei oretz. They know nothing about this. The young boys that get a cut, they make some money. At least in Eretz Yisrael, most of the people are not Talmidei Chachamim, and havloah is havloah. It's not to be taken for granted. Either the moicha must make that stipulation or the loker. So there are two halachas that you need to be diligent about. You buy an esrog together with the lulav or a dasam, because most other years it's different. You don't buy, in Israel there are more and more people that buy sets, but most people still don't buy sets, especially B'nai Torah, looking for exceptional esrogim. So usually people that sell esrogim don't sell them together with the lulav or a dasam. But this year it needs to be b'havloah. So once again, if you buy an esrog from Italy or from Greece, there is no kedusha shvius. Haredi people don't rely on the heter mechira, and therefore, the vast majority of esrogim in America come from Israel. I did some research. About 80% of the esrogim sold in America are from Israel. The vast majority. And those esrogim have kedusha shvius. And therefore, when you buy them b'havloah. And you need to make clear that it is havloah.
Is there a specific Indian not to buy in Eretz Yisrael esrog this year?
Generally speaking, I think one should be machabev Peres Eretz Yisrael. So I don't want to say not to buy an esrog from Eretz Yisrael, especially it is impossible. You know, I did some research and I spoke with quite a few growers of esrogim and shlochim from esrogim. It is impossible to supply the demand if we don't use esrogim from Eretz Yisrael. So if a person privately wants to prefer another esrog, I could understand it. I could see it as a chumrah, but it is not something which I would recommend. Now, exporting esrogim from Eretz Yisrael to Chutz La'aretz is an extremely problematic issue. Is that the topic I'm supposed to deal with today, Reb Shlomo? How do we plan? Are we supposed to talk about exporting?
I mean, I think so, unless Rav wants to make it the two shiurim, but we have to do Prusbal also. So I think
the problem is next Sunday, I'm in America. This coming Sunday. I'm sorry to disappoint you all, but it just happens to be that I'm spending a lot of time with stars. Maybe we could work something out when I'm going to be in America, but I don't know. I'm going to be next Sunday in Woodmere. So, okay, so let's briefly discuss the issue of exporting esrogim. Could we have the Mishnah Perek Vav Mishnah?
Pesach, I believe it's in the second set, I think.
Or Rambam Perek Yud Gimel, or both.
I think we have them. Let's see.
Okay. What we need is Perek Vav.
We have it in the second set. I sent two. You only have one? Okay, it's on the screen.
It was on, yeah. Ein Moitzian, Mishnah. Ein Moitzian, Shem Esleifa, Vepere Shvius, Ma'oretz Lechutz La'aretz. It's the Mishnah. And nobody disputes this Mishnah. And the Rambam brings it, Perek Hey, Halacha Yud Gimel. So what is the heter to export hundreds of thousands of esrogim from Eretz Yisrael to Chutz La'aretz? Psachim Nun Beis Amud Beis. If we can have it, great. If not, I'll just share with you what the Gemara says there. The Gemara tells a story of Safra. Okay, here we have the Rambam. Hey, okay, great.
The Gemara is on the bottom.
Yeah, the Gemara is on the bottom. Let's scroll directly down to the Gemara because the Rambam just quotes the Mishnah, and which is a halacha pshut.
Okay, you can freeze it right here.
Peres sheyotzu miyetzu l'chutz la'aretz zvaram b'kol mukom shehem. Reb Shimon Ozer yachzuru lemekoyman v'yizba'aru. Reb Safra nufek me'eretz Yisrael l'chutz la'aretz. Have b'hada gar b'dechamre de Shvius. He had wine from Shvius. Lova b'hada Reb Huna b'rei Rebika v'Reb Kahana. And then they discuss, do we need to bring it back? Don't we need to bring it back? What was the heter of Reb Safra to take yayin shel shvius from Eretz Yisrael to Chutz La'aretz? It's a Mishnah mefareshes that is an issa. So let's have a look at Tosfos.
You have to scroll down, Pesach.
Scroll down.
Oh, here we go.
Here we are at the bottom of the page. Reb Safra apik garbe de chamra me'eretz Yisrael l'chutz la'aretz hiksherivo. From the Mishnah we just learned, ein motziin shem and sleifa v'teretz hosa ma'ira ra'achila. Reb Safra apik l'schoira. The yesh schoira shemuteres inami b'shoige goitzion. Rav Safar wasn't aware. He didn't pack his luggage. He was a shoige, which is a shtickle doichik. First eretz is, you're not allowed to take out peres l'chutzars la'achila, l'schoira mutar. Comes along the Chazon Ish, Yud Gimel Zayin, and the Chazon Ish says, what's the svara? La'achila osor, l'schoira mutar. The Chazon Ish argues it's a tos, and it's the other way around. L'schoira osor, la'achila mutar. Hadinim hamuvuorim.
It's further down. It's further down. Just
further down. Down. Just a moment.
Here's the brooms. The matatois is here. I think.
Which Dibra Maschel is the brooms?
Hakdaishon. Line 3.
Yeah, Hakdaishon with the Shvius. Lasis mitatois. Avram Yuchel HaSukkah. Einoi Kodesh. Just one moment. So maybe I got my notes wrong. Would we scroll up?
It's a different simon. I think, could it be Ches?
Maybe.
This is still the first sugya. This is the sugya of
I need
higher
to
up
check.
on the second. Hello.
Higher up on the second column.
Don't see it.
One moment. Okay.
I think Isser Lahitzi Chayer is in a different thing.
Okay,
so
so
maybe you'll tell us.
I need to check in my safer, but I don't want to keep you up right now. I don't want to keep you up. I suggest we will look for it later. But the Chazon Ish argues that it's the other way around. The Isser Lahoitzi is only taking out a big quantity, l'schoira. But if a person has his own personal perish shvius and he's going to consume them in chutzlaretz, that is not what the Mishnah means. That is not what the Mishnah asserts. Reb Shlomo, are we still connected?
We are. So which would come out that the whole mimsad of selling of bringing million striking beer to chutzlaretz doesn't work a little bit of Chazon Ish.
Is a big problem. But the Chazon Ish, on the other hand, writes, because it's a tzorech mitzvah, mishum bitul mitzvah, we are making. So two of the greatest gedolim in Galicia corresponded with the Ridvaz in Sfas regarding Din Shvius. So Nochem Weidenfeld, the brother of the HaRav, was murdered by the Nazis in Dombrovo, and Rav Avrom Mendel Steinberg, Baal Shalos HaTshuvas Machaze Avraham. And in Sefer, Rav Levisor Mishkolov, Pa'es HaShulchan, there's a big kuntras at the end of the Sefer, Beis Ridvaz, Mishmeres Abayis. And they deal with this question at great length. So Lemaisa, it's a complicated heter, but the Chazon Ish was Mekel, because he efshar b'lav. So in Minchas Osher Siman Samech Aleph on Shvius, what I wrote is there are two different approaches in the Rishonim. What is the Isser? Lo yitzi Peres Shvius l'chutz la'aretz. It definitely is an Isser d'Rabbanan, not an Isser d'Oraisa. The Rash, Perek Vav Masechet Shvius, the Rash writes, Mishum Biur. Peres Shvius, you need to be Mevayer in Eretz Yisrael, so you need to bring them back. And that fits in nicely with the Gemara and Psachim. First, the Gemara has this discussion. Haim Mizbarim B'Kol Mokum Shem or in Eretz Yisrael. So the Aruch is Mizbarim B'Eretz Yisrael, and that's why you don't take them out, because you're not going to have to bring them back. Rash Mishantz in Toras Koyanim, Parshas Bahar says, there's a chashash in Chutz La'aretz, people won't keep Kiddush Shvius because they're not aware of Hilchos Shvius. They're going to confuse Peres Etzesur with Peres Chutz La'aretz. So the reason Chazal asked her taking Peres Shvius out to Chutz La'aretz is because Hefsid, Schaira, people will not be Nizar in Kiddush Shvius. So there's room to argue, that is my argument. But a slugim after Sikkus, nobody does chayil. So what's the chashash? What's the chashash? Slugim after Shvius, either you're going to eat them, or they'll just dry out, and after they dry out, you throw them away. So there is no chashash. They will never get to
that's beer? That's beer in America? To let it dry out is considered beer?
No. But a slugim will actually not even come to Shasa Biur because Shasa Biur is Kol L'chaim in a soda. And people will not have any Esrogim by that time. They'll be dry, they won't be fitting for consumption. And if they won't be fitting Oimed La'achila, there's no mitzvah of Biur. It's Ke'elu Kvar Nisbayel. Biur is you need to consume it, you need to eat it up before Zman HaBiur. But if you don't eat a slugim, when the Zman HaBiur comes, you're not going to eat them before or after. However, if you make compote, then you need to be B'kayim, says B'yer. But because the majority of slugim, there is no chashash choir or hefsid, and they won't be eaten. So the concept of beer wouldn't be relevant. Maybe that is the basis of the kula. But the Chazanish was Mekel Mishum Bitul Mitzvah. And because there is no possibility of having enough slugim if we don't export the slugim from Eretz Yisrael, and we're dealing with an Issa D'Rabbanan, and I just want to add on my Sforah. If the Chashash is Kiddush Shvius, it's not really Shaykh by Yisraelim. Because Kiddush Shvius is either Schayra. So after Shvius, nobody does Schayra. You can't sell a Slugim after Shvius. And when you sell a Slugim, people know it's a Slugim, it's a Slugim. So I think the reasoning of the Isser Ein Moitzi and Peres Shvius L'chutz La'aretz is questionable whether it's Shaykh by Yisraelim, but the Iker Heter, Al Pi HaChazanish, is B'mokim Bitul Mitzvah, we're not machmir. And just as a tziruf, according to the Marashdam, Slugim which aren't Oimed La'achila actually would have no Kiddush Shvius, but nobody relies on the Marashdam. And as I said at the beginning of today's shir, we are Noyag Kiddush Shvius B'Yisrael.
A few questions, if we may. First of all, everybody asked, is there an Inyan to send try to be makbid to send the esrog back? Is there such an Inyan?
I think so. Lechatchila, yes. I think so. Lechatchila, yes. Lechatchila.
Compote or sending the esrog back?
What?
Which is preferable, compote or sending the esrog back? Or making compote in Eretz Yisrael, I guess.
Reb Chaim B'derech Emunah, Tzion Halacha Perek Hey, As Kuf Ayin Tes, writes that one should be makbid this year to eat the esrog after Shvius based on Tosfos, based on the Chazon Ish, la'achila muter l'schoira also, contrary to what we find in Tosfos. But I don't think that's a solution, because the point of the Chazon Ish is, hoitzi la'achila means like Rav Safra. He took a little bit of wine to drink it in Chutz La'aretz, but that doesn't solve the problem, the fact that you're going to make comfort. Okay, we have Tzion Halacha Kufayin Tes. So let's see what he writes inside the Sefer. Ein l'shloich esloigim l'chul, u'mekol mokom ein ha'peres nesorem v'yoytze behem, v'l'shloich esrog bilti murkav l'kiyum ha'mitzvah b'mokom sheyesh l'stapek, שיסבת למצווה בהדר המשלוח, הדס נויטה להטיו. So that is based on the Chazon Ish. מכתב ממורון כסב יד, אורחס רבנו, שמורון ציווה שיוכלו אסרג אחר הסוכס, וכן שומת. So Reb Chaim says, it's a shmua, it is also brought in Orchos Rabbeinu, which I don't really understand. If you're going to eat the esrog after Shvius, so maybe that is just to prevent hefsid. But if you eat the esrog after Shvius, then you have a chiyuv biur. So I think it would be preferable, if possible, to send the esrog back to HSukkah, or b'chol ofen, the heter to send the sorghum to Chutz La'aretz, as we just saw in Derech Hamuna, is based on bitur mitzvah. We have no other option.
Last question: where do we find a parallel that bitur mitzvah takes away halacha b'fereshes? Is there such a concept? We're worried about it. So people will go to California and find this regum. Where do we find such a concept?
Very good question. But we do find a parallel. Sharas Shuvas Minchaso Shechelek Gimel Siman Pei Beis is a fascinating siman, in which I brought about 10 sources that sometimes were mater and Isser B'kum V'asei to prevent the essence of the Isser in a greater scale b'Sheva Al Taisa. So what I argue is this: if the Isser Schoira is Mechashash Hefsid, if we're not going to export the Sorghum to Chutz La'aretz, we're going to have hundreds of thousands of Sorghum rotting away, drying up in Eretz soil, and that is a bezoyin, and that is Hefsid. Well, it's not Hefsid b'yadayim, so we're not over Isser. So if you ask for a makor, I would strongly suggest yes. Lavar avera b'kum basei. Complicated caption, but it's a fascinating siman. And all the lamdim listening to me, I think, learn this siman, and you'll have so much anua. And I think I didn't deal in this siman about Esrogim, but I think it's relevant. In my Sefer on Shvius, I did quote this siman. If we won't export Esrogim, we're going to have hundreds of thousands of Esrogim either rotting on the trees or in the fields, drying up. And therefore, if the Isser to export the Esrogim to Chutz La'aretz is Mishum Chash Hefsid, that might be a rationale to be made. So I suggest learning Sharas Shuvas Minchaso Gimel Pei Beis. I'm rushing to another Shia, my dear friends. So we'll be in touch regarding next week.
Okay. Yes, we'll send the two around.